The COVID-19 pandemic that emerged 2 years ago came with a devastating effect on lives of millions across the world as well as on the global economy. With no signs of the pandemic ending anytime soon, the global community beamed their searchlight on the discovery of vaccines that can protect humans against the severe disease and also drive herd immunity. The rapid development of COVID-19 vaccines in 2020 was a remarkable achievement that gave hope to the world in the dark days of the deadly pandemic. Fast forward to 2021, the world was confronted with scandalous levels of vaccine inequality, with the rich nations vaccinating a huge number of its population, while Africa and other developing nations struggle for access to vaccines. Today, the story has shifted from access to vaccines to contending with vaccines with short shelf lives. Recent reports suggest that up to 1 million COVID-19 vaccines are estimated to have expired in Nigeria last month without being used. On this edition of Nigeria Today, we shall be looking at the state of COVID-19 vaccines in Nigeria. I am Lydia Odije Ochi. Welcome to the program. Joining us in the studio to shed light on issues of state of COVID-19 vaccines in Nigeria is the Minister of Health, Dr. Osagie Ehanire. Glad to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Available information from the Ministry of Health shows that some of the vaccines in Nigeria have residual shelf lives of only few months, while some have few weeks. What is the issue behind the country having a stockpile of vaccines with low shelf lives?
Well, these are vaccines that were donated. They are not vaccines that were procured. And there are, at the beginning of this appearance of vaccines, countries who ordered large quantities of vaccines, which they, finding that they could not dispense, began to offer to other countries. And we got a good lot of these vaccines. We were lucky to be able to get donations of these vaccines free of charge, some of them with a very limited shelf lives, and a lot of which we actually had to politely reject. But of the ones we got, the ability or the capacity, despite all the capacity to dispense them, some of them got expired because the shelf life was that short. They are not the vaccines that we procured.
Okay. Now we're clear on that. Honorable Minister, the issue of the low shelf life of these vaccines has left many Nigerians wondering on its potency. Does the shelf life affect the efficacy in any way?
Well, experts will speak more on that, but the fact is that these are vaccines that were already in stockpile of other countries for some time, and when they discover they can't use them and they're expecting new supplies, they give them away. Now, there are situations where experts in vaccine management and vaccine science have said yes, they are able to speak with the manufacturers, and manufacturers in some cases have said that yes, there's the possibility of a 3-month extension in the efficacy of the vaccines, but we have never accepted such vaccines. Any vaccines that had a shelf life extended was generally declined by us. So the shelf life is from the date of manufacture to the date of use, but in these cases, if they were submitted, let us say donated to us, after 4 months in storage somewhere, or 2 months in storage, or more, 5 months, then of course what is remaining of the shelf life is very limited.
Definitely. Now, currently, sir, are there arrangements with donor countries to address this issue of short shelf lives of these vaccines?
Yes, there are moves to do that. We have been speaking with world bodies, particularly the COVAX facility that coordinates these supplies. Many of the countries who want to donate vaccines, donate them through the COVAX facility, some of them through the African Union AVAT facility. And we have had conversations with them that those countries who actually wish to donate should consider doing so early enough, because the time between taking the decision to donate and also packaging and transporting and distributing does take a considerable period and takes off from the shelf life of the vaccine. So by the time it arrives, it is pretty much behind, just behind the date of expiration.
Okay. Now, a press statement credited to you, sir, says Nigeria has politely started declining all vaccine donations with short shelf life, or those that cannot be delivered in time. What is the implication of this on availability of vaccine?
Yes, we still have quite a good stock of vaccines. That's one. And secondly, there are many more, I would say millions of vaccines out there which the owners or manufacturers are keeping to use. And once they decide that they are not going to use them, they should early enough begin to ship them. There are some who offer you these vaccines and you accept them. They tell you, well, it has 3 months or 2 months shelf life, but by the time the formalities are completed to package and transport them, it takes a lot out. So we have started saying, well, calculate the shipment time and the processing time and the distribution time along with your the shelf life, and know whether you accept or not. And that is why we have started politely telling other countries with such, we got such offers just a couple of weeks ago, which we politely declined.
It's okay. Now, the issue of hesitancy amongst Nigerians, how can that be addressed? Because if there was no hesitancy, most of these vaccines would have been administered. So what would you say about that?
Well, that's obviously a part of the problem. Hesitancy is there, but the messages that we have been sending out through various sources, campaigns, jingles, meetings with traditional community leaders and religious leaders and political leaders, all those are messages that are going out to try to convince Nigerians that the vaccine is safe and the vaccine can protect your life. In fact, it can save your life. And the majority, over 90% of the case fatalities we are seeing now are among those who did not get vaccinated, especially again among those who had comorbidities. They had hypertension, they had heart disease, they had diabetes, or any other kind of ailment that would immediately cause the COVID-19 infection to become fatal.
Okay. Well, we still have a lot more to talk about, but let's take a break now. We shall continue with the Honorable Minister. Don't go away.
This is NTA News 24 broadcasting from Abuja. You can watch us anywhere, anytime on the following platforms. For more information, log on to our website www.nta.ng or join us on our social media handles, Facebook at NTA News 24.
For comments, suggestions and inquiries, send an email to news24@nta.gov.ng or call us on the following numbers.
NTA News 24.
News and more news.
Welcome back. The program is Nigeria Today, and we are discussing state of COVID-19 vaccines. Still with us in the studio is the Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Ihanire. Sir, in the press statement mentioned before we went on break, you you talked about long-term plans of manufacturing indigenous vaccines in Nigeria. Tell us what is happening so far in that regard.
Well, in that regard, we have chosen to work with the private sector, and the government has a ownership in a company called BVN, Biovaccine Nigeria Limited, which is going to be producing vaccines. It also produce routine vaccines, which Nigeria will procure and use to vaccinate the citizens. But we have been talking with them to also consider COVID-19 vaccines, or perhaps any other kind of vaccines that will become necessary in future. But in order to produce vaccines, you require the manpower, the infrastructure, the capital, and above all, you require technology transfer. Unless you want to go on a very long journey to find out how to make it, which will take many years, you have to get technology transfer from a company that is willing to work with you, to partner with you, or to come and do manufacturing, or contract manufacturing in your country. So we are at that phase of talking with manufacturers, or at least the BVN, the store, is doing that. And we here in government are trying to facilitate that process by talking to the gatekeepers in the entire area of vaccine production. The National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control has to be able to certify the vaccines as usable and fit for humans, and in order to do that, they have to have a certain maturity level 3, which they are working on and will be getting anytime soon. And there also has to be conversation with financiers, those who put the capital down for production of vaccines. Okay. So that's where we are at the moment, supporting our candidate for vaccine manufacture.
It's okay. Now, I want to ask, with the issue of vaccine hesitancy for foreign vaccines, how are we hoping to convince Nigerians to get vaccinated with indigenous vaccines?
Well, I think that people who are hesitant about vaccines will be hesitant about all vaccines, whether they are foreign or indigenous. And it's a question of educating people, educating them, and telling them what vaccines do. And what the vaccine does is to make sure that if you get a little bit of it, it is prepared in a way that the bit you get does not harm you, but stimulates your blood to produce antibodies and produce certain protective cells, white blood cells, that will now attack that germ or that pathogen anytime it enters your body in the future. So it's a sort of a defense mechanism which has worked very well against polio. It's being used against TB, against measles, and various kinds of infections that have attacked human beings, including smallpox, yellow fever. So that's what vaccines do. They sort of give you protection from inside your body, from the blood, so that you don't need to take medicine anymore. So once that message is known and shared and understood and accepted, we believe that the hesitancy will begin to reduce. Right now, it's largely a question of not knowing why, yeah, or of ignorance, if you like.
Yes, sir. Talking about this ignorance, how much is being done or is in the works in getting this awareness to the rural areas for those who do not know?
Well, the problem is not so much specified rural and urban, because even in urban areas, in fact, that's where you probably have more people who are hesitant, because those who have half knowledge and make their judgment based on half knowledge, haven't read one side of a story, are more difficult to convince than those who have read nothing about it and you explain it to them. So the rural areas will probably not be a problem and haven't been so far, but the suburban areas are likely to be. But education, again, enlightenment, those will be the answer. And also those who derive fun from passing misinformation around, telling stories to amuse themselves, but at the same time creating doubt in the minds of users. Now, that is not a very good thing. I'm talking about what goes on in social media, various stories that take root which are not true at all. Those ones are counterproductive, and they're undoing what we are trying to do.
Now, in the midst of all this, the federal government has consistently urged Nigerians to go and get vaccinated. But so far, just about 4% of Nigerians are fully vaccinated. How available and accessible are these vaccines?
Vaccines are there. We have more than enough vaccines that we can use. As a matter of fact, we are asking the donors to bring them in phases. As we begin to spread them around, we are now giving the vaccines to various hospitals and facilities, including vaccines being given to company hospitals, to staff clinics, to private clinics, to not only to federal institutions but primary healthcare centers. And they are doing, or in some states, they have started what they call mass vaccination in churches, mosques, marketplaces, supermarkets, event centers, motor parks, to have more people accept this vaccine. You do not pay anything for it, and you get a card that allows you to say that yes, you have been vaccinated, because the time will come when you will be asked to produce a vaccination card in order to enjoy certain facilities or certain privileges, like even boarding an aeroplane. You may have to have a vaccine card. I believe that time is coming, or even entering a bus to travel from point A to point B. I think that time is coming. So the earlier persons get vaccinated, the better it is. There are restaurants now where if you don't have a card, they will not let you in. So I think that Nigerians should begin to get vaccinated so as not to be excluded from social and work activities.
Okay. Honorable Minister, just when Nigerians and the rest of the world had started learning how to live with the COVID-19 virus, another variant, the Omicron variant, surfaced on the global stage. With the confirmation of some cases of this variant in Nigeria, should people entertain fear amongst themselves?
No, I don't think we should have fear, but we should be careful, and we should also be more compliant with the guidelines that are being provided by the organs of society, the organs of government, that are to protect the people that are charged with looking after the health of the public. This variant, it is not sure now exactly where it appeared, because South Africa announced it first. Before then, it was in Tanzania, and it's possible that it was in other countries even before then. It has been named the Omicron virus. But it doesn't look as if it is more virulent than previous or the ancestral virus strain. But it seems to transmit faster, that more people will get it than from if it were the ancestral virus. But viruses do mutate. They keep changing their form. It is their own survival strategy. And some of the forms they mutate into are not worse than the previous one. Others are not harmful at all. But a few can become mutations of variants of great concern. And those are the ones we worry about. If they have a very nasty clinical presentation, then they are a danger to life. But generally, we can protect ourselves with vaccination and with adhering to the social measures that have been established as helpful.
Okay. So now, are you telling us that the Omicron variant, with the vaccines available, is the vaccines potent against the Omicron variant?
Scientists are still working on determining how potent it is and how much it can neutralize the Omicron variant, because if you have a vaccine neutralizing antibodies, your problem is solved. Now, because of the nature of the mutation of that Omicron, scientists feared that it might evade the vaccines, or rather the antibodies that we have right now. But it is still better than none, because even if it is able to checkmate the Omicron virus by 20, 30, 40, 50%, it's still better than zero. But again, perhaps it also will checkmate it fully. It is not yet very clearly known. So the emergence of the Omicron variant does not mean that we should not vaccinate. On the contrary, it means that we should increase the vaccination, because your chances of antibodies that will neutralize the Omicron variant are much higher than the chances of no vaccine at all and no antibodies in your system. The antibodies in your system will work give you a better chance of escaping the wrath of the Omicron than no antibodies at all.
Okay. Well, we're made to understand that the World Health Organization mentioned the Omicron variant as a variant of concern. Why?
Yes, that's what I said a while ago, that this variant, when it was examined, had very strong mutations in 32 positions, which was very unusual, an unusually high number of areas where the mutation occurred. When they do the analysis and the sequencing. So and that led them to say, well, this variant must be really, really nasty if it has this kind of mutation. That is an assumption. And that assumption still has to be clinically manifested. And that is why they label it a variant of concern, because of the unusual pattern with which it became known. But we're looking, and the whole of the scientific world is looking at what impact it has on humans so far, and happily it hasn't, so far, as yet turned out to be a lot more virulent than the past one.
So, sir, please, are there any measures on ground by the Ministry of Health to mitigate the further spread of the Omicron variant?
Yes, there are measures. We have ramped up our campaign against behavior that expose you to the risk of getting infected. We are telling people not to gather in large numbers, do not congregate, particularly closed rooms, put on your mask, wash your hands regularly, use sanitizers, and when you are coughing, use a handkerchief or tissue to cover, and above all, get vaccinated and avoid unnecessary travel. Unnecessary travel, particularly in crowded buses and trains. So those are the best ways to protect yourself so far.
Okay. Like we already know, some Nigerians are still skeptical of taking the COVID-19 vaccines due to one belief or the other. Are there any known health reasons or religious reasons why the vaccine may be detrimental to some persons?
Well, that is not that's not a problem that's peculiar to Nigeria. If you look at news, you find that in foreign countries there are also a certain category of persons who do not believe in vaccines, who do not want vaccines, who are fighting their governments because the government says take a vaccine. So Nigeria is not alone in this league, but again, it's the duty of government to protect its citizens. And if science says that yes, if a certain number is vaccinated, then the likelihood of anyone getting sick is less, then government wants to have that number vaccinated, about 70% we are looking for, to give us herd immunity. The risk or probability of the infection spreading is reduced. And even if it spreads, the number of people who get sick, seriously sick, is reduced. And you know that the treatment of the sick people is at government expense. So government spends less, and all these add up in the sense that the fewer people get sick, the less you have to bother about treatment. And the more vaccines you give, the fewer people get sick. So it is all following what science advises us. But there are no reasons for any traditional beliefs that are preaching against vaccinations or against vaccines.
We already know that some countries have instituted travel bans against Nigeria because of course, the Omicron variant. What is Nigeria doing likewise?
Well, we think those who are imposing travel bans should reconsider these bans because they are not helpful. And in dealing with COVID-19, you want to protect lives, but also protect livelihoods. And if you take measures that are not necessarily going to protect lives, but damage livelihoods, then you're obviously doing the wrong thing, and you are taking the wrong bargain. So we think that those who are doing blanket banning of travelers should go and think it over. We don't think that it's going to have a value, and because there are other ways in detecting travelers who are probably carrying the virus in. You can do PCR tests 48 hours before. You can do another test at plane side. You can do a test on arrival. There are so many ways of doing that screening that you don't really gain much. And on the other hand, if you ban flights and ban the movement of people, you are restricting commerce, you are restricting movement of people and goods, and also causing great inconvenience. Plans that have been made have to be abandoned, business deals have to change, and so it has a negative impact on lives on both sides, really. So I think if you put it on a balanced scale, it's there is not much wisdom in blanket banning, especially when the variant itself has not proven to be fatal or dangerous, or has not taken dozens of lives or whatever. So I think that we should like to advise those who are carrying out blanket bans to reconsider.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for sharing your thoughts with us on Nigeria Today. This is where we wrap it up on the program tonight. Really appreciate our guest, Dr. Osagi Ehanire, Minister of Health. Thank you for your time. Nigeria Today comes your way every weekday at 7:30 in the evening. Don't forget, you can watch this and other editions on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. I am Lydia Udidiochi. Let's do this again tomorrow. Good evening.